She lifts a brush. White paste drips from it like milk. The room is silent. Ladies in waiting hold their breath. The queen brings the brush to her cheek. Lead, vinegar, oil, a mask that will shine under candlelight and rot her skin beneath it. In 30 seconds, she looks angelic. In 30 years, that same glow can steal her teeth, her hair, her memory. This is not beauty. This is strategy. This is survival painted in poison. Picture the portrait you know so well. The skin like porcelain, the lips a precise red, the gaze calm and timeless. Now, picture the recipe behind it. Ground lead, soaked in vinegar to make a brilliant white called Venetian ceruse. Mercury, mixed with sulfur to make a vivid vermilion for the cheeks and lips. Arsenic powders to smooth the skin. Belladonna drops slipped into the eyes to make the pupils wide and romantic. Each jar a promise, each jar a threat. In royal Europe, from the 16th century through the 19th, a woman's face could not be allowed to tell the truth. Illness had to vanish, pox, scars had to disappear, sleepless nights and political fear could not show. The court demanded a flawless mask. So queens and princesses learned a cruel routine: paint to cover damage, poison that caused more damage, then paint again to hide what the poison did. Lead came first. White skin meant power, wealth, indoor life, freedom from labor. Venetian ceruse, made by suspending thin plates of lead over bowls of vinegar until a white crust bloomed, was ground and mixed into a creamy paste. It covered scars like plaster. It reflected light so softly that a candle-lit hall made it look almost supernatural. It also entered the body through tiny cuts and pores. Lead loosened teeth. It caused headaches, tremors, and memory loss. It made hair fall. It harmed fertility. But no one could argue with results on the surface. A flawless face was a political message. The risk stayed hidden under lace. Red followed white. A pale mask without color looked ghostly. To bring life back to the cheeks and lips, many courts favored vermilion, a pigment made from mercury sulfide. The color was rich, warm, and striking. It was also a direct line of mercury to the body. Mercury blurred sight, shook hands, and darkened moods. Safer reds existed, such as carmine made from crushed cochineal insects, and they were used too, but vermilion was common because it was bold and immediate. Bold and immediate often wins in rooms where power is performed every day. Eyes needed attention as well. In parts of Italy, women used belladonna, the deadly nightshade plant. A few drops in the eye dilated the pupils. Wide pupils looked tender, loving, and youthful. They also brought a racing heart and dim vision. Too much could blind, too much could kill, yet the effect was praised, painted, and imitated, because the gaze, like the skin, had to send a message that the throne did not fade.
There were powders and washes for the skin itself. Some women used arsenic-based complexion wafers, sold as a secret cure for blemishes. They were swallowed, not just spread, so the poison moved through the entire body. Corrosive sublimate, a form of mercury chloride, was also used to bleach freckles and spots. It burned, it peeled. For a short time, the skin looked smoother. For a long time, the skin grew weaker. The cycle tightened its hold. Now, step inside the dressing room. This was not a quick swipe and go, it was a ritual. Curtains drawn to cut harsh daylight, bowls, cloths, and scented waters laid out in order. Trusted women, usually of noble birth, standing close enough to paint the corners of a royal mouth. They knew the recipes, they watched the reactions. They decided when a paste needed more oil, when the redness needed a little more pop, when the skin could endure another layer. They were not just friends, they were the gatekeepers of an illusion that could not be allowed to fail. Removing the mask was its own ceremony. At night, vinegar and wine stung as they dissolved the lead. Soaps made from animal fat and lye scraped the skin clean.
Raw meat poultices and bread soaked in milk were laid on sores to soothe the burning. Linen cloths blotted blood from broken patches. Then cooling powders pressed in to calm the heat. Sleep came, sometimes, not as rest but as escape. In the morning the jars came out again. The trap was simple. The paint hid the wounds, the poison caused new wounds. More paint hid those. Over time, the skin cracked more, the pores widened. The natural glow vanished. So the mask had to get thicker. In portraits it looked eternal. In the mirror, without the powder, it looked like war. Courts knew. Physicians knew. Not all looked away. Some advised rosewater and plant-based creams instead. Some warned against the strongest formulas. Others wrote prescriptions that made the damage worse. A tonic to cleanse the blood, made with a little mercury. A lotion to whiten the skin, made with sugar of lead. These were accepted remedies in the medical texts of their time, so the harm continued under the seal of authority. Look at the painters. They were part of the machinery too. They arrived when the mask was fresh. They saw the stiff smile and the powdered lashes. They translated poison into perfection. Generations later, visitors stare at those paintings and see calm, grace, immortality. They do not see the shaking hand out of frame. They do not see the maid who guided the brush to the lip line minutes before. Paint told the story the court wanted told. The truth sat in a cold bowl on a dressing table a few rooms away. Hair suffered as well. Lead and mercury irritated the scalp. Harsh depilatories that mixed quicklime and arsenic were used to shape hairlines and remove facial hair. They burned the skin and caused blisters. Wigs became a necessity, not only a fashion. Under the powdered curls, real hair thinned or vanished. The solution to this was the same as always: more cover, more artifice, more things that stung and smelled and slowly ruined the body that wore them. Teeth blackened, gums bled, breath soured, mouths closed in portraits for a reason. Smiles shrank to tight, polite lines. The language of elegance adapted to hide the effects of the mask. Fan placement, chin tilt, the angle of the head, each gesture an old code, refined to protect a secret everyone in the room already knew. Some women pushed back. They favored lighter powders. They trusted gentler recipes based on rice flour, zinc, or plant oils. They called on physicians who argued against metals. But fashion is a heavy force when it is tied to politics. Purity, paleness, and painted control were a visual strategy for monarchies that needed to appear untouched by time. And so, the safest path for many royal women was to do what was expected, to endure the pain quietly, and to let the portrait tell a cleaner story than the mirror could ever tell. Think of the letters written by diplomats and ambassadors. They often noted how radiant the Queen looked at a ball, how unchanged she appeared after a difficult year, how vigorous her presence seemed in the throne room, words chosen with care. Radiant, unchanged, vigorous. No mention of sores behind the powder. No mention of hair in the comb. No mention of trembling hands. The state could not allow a face to speak honestly. And this is where the silence of those closest to the Queen matters most. Ladies in waiting counted lost eyelashes on cloths as they wiped off vermilion. They saw skin peel with every wash. They smelled the sweetness of mercury in the air. They knew which pillowcases to hide. They knew which recipes were banished, only to return when pressure rose. They kept records in their heads, not on paper. They guarded a body the way guards protected a gate. So what did this actually cost? Years of health, chances at children, clear thought, stable mood. It cost the right to say no to the mask without looking weak. It cost the freedom to show a real face and still be believed. The public saw the crown. The painter saw the mask. The woman felt the poison in her bones. Now stand before that portrait again. See the cold brightness of the skin. See the careful red of the lips. See the gloss of the eyes. It is beautiful. It is also a record of a decision. The decision that the appearance of power was more important than the comfort of the person who wore it. That decision sat in bowls of lead, in sticks of mercury red, in drops of belladonna, in wafers of arsenic tucked under the tongue. Disturbing, yes, but also revealing. It shows what royal women were forced to carry, not just crowns and duties, but chemicals that turned their own bodies into battlegrounds for the sake of image and rule. The next time you hear someone praise a queen for her ageless grace, remember the price of that grace. Remember the jars, remember the brush, remember the silence in the room when the first stroke of white touched the skin. Beauty was not soft. It was a weapon. It was a wall. It was poison, polished until it gleamed, and behind it stood a woman who had to keep smiling while it slowly took her apart.